The first thing I wanted to do was just simply talk very briefly about the 4 documents that we're going to focus on during this training session, so that when we go into BCMS, you'll have some appreciation of what we're trying to data enter. The first form that we're viewing is a field permit issued by a field inspector. And this is a permit that starts by typically a property owner contacting the program, identifying a specific activity that they wish to perform. It's an activity seaward of the coastal construction control line. A determination is made that the activity qualifies for a field permit, and so the field inspector meets with the property owner or agent on the property in question, and a field permit is actually issued there on site. What you'll discover about the BEAT program, quite a few of the processes that we have in place are processes that were developed during the 1980s, and so there's quite a bit of paper associated with them, and so during the next year, you'll see that the program, like other regulatory programs, is trying to move to a paperless situation. But all that said, this particular field permit is issued by the field inspector, and this is one of the 4 documents where we expect that at the district location, this field permit will be data entered into BCMS. And what is BCMS? BCMS is basically the permitting application for the BEACH program. It is Oracle driven, but I am quite certain that very few of you, except for perhaps the field inspectors, have seen this application previously. Before I continue on, I did send an email to you all earlier this morning that conveyed both the user's manual and a quick reference guide. And I'm curious to know whether any of you actually received that email.
This is Steve. I haven't seen it yet.
You have not seen it yet?
No, it may be there, Gene, but I wasn't looking for it to begin with. So
okay.
I'd have to get offline and go find it.
Don't worry about that. Has anyone seen the email?
I've seen it, Trey. This Trey.
Okay. 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 Well, let's go back to these to the 4 documents. Then we just talked about the field permit, and so the next document is the pre-construction conference record. And all this document is doing is documenting the fact that there was a pre-construction meeting held, generally on the site, with the field inspector, the contractor, and sometimes the property owner, where the permit is reviewed, the conditions are reviewed, because most frequently the contractor is oblivious to the permit conditions that are imposed on that activity. So this is our opportunity to convey that to the contractor. The third is actually a report. It's a construction status report, and the field inspectors routinely visit sites to determine their status, whether the project has actually started work, are they in progress, have they finished, and that is very succinctly summarized in that far right column, identifying the date that they visited the site and what the construction status is on that particular day. And then finally, we have the at closeout, the construction has been completed. Very frequently, if we're talking about major work activities, the permittee has submitted a final certification that the project's in compliance with the permit itself, and then the field inspector also visits the site to establish compliance. And with those two documents, the final certification and the final site inspection, the closeout of the permit can follow. So that's just sort of an introduction to what those four documents are. And again, I sympathize with those that have not viewed the training modules 1 and 2 for a more broad and general description of the BEACH program. But again, our focus today is very limited, and the focus is simply how to data entry the 3 reports, the 3 documents, and the 1 report into BCMS, and then finally how to then, what is the Oculus profile or path for then placing those 3 documents into Oculus. So with that said, let's go ahead and end the show on this and move to BCMS. And our pilot for BCMS is going to be Larry. And so initially, of course, he's going to log in. For those that viewed the email that I sent earlier to you today, what you'll find, or what you realize, is that you now have VEO privileges, the ability to do data entry in BCMS. If you do not currently have an Oracle account, well, if you do have an Oracle account, when you do a login, you'll see that you now have another option, and that's BCMS. For those that don't have an Oracle account, I will provide you with a link to BCMS after this training session. So, Larry, I see you're getting ready to log in, so go ahead and log in.
Okay, hi, this is Larry. This is the first screen you're going to see for logging in, and it's always going to be your last name _ first initial, and you're going to then choose your password once you get a regular one. The database is always going to be Aura Prod. Sometimes it'll be Aura Beta if there's any testing involved. And when you connect, this is what you're going to see. By the way, BCMS stands for Beaches and Coastal Management System. And the options you see up in the top left-hand corner are not what you're going to see, because I have more data entry privileges than you will. But what you're always going to have is a default. And the highlighted top line that says Beaches and Coastal Management System, BCMS, is what you're going to be using. So you always have a choice also of either using your keyboard or a mouse. So mostly what I do is use the keyboard, and because BCMS is highlighted, I just hit enter. But I'm on a laptop and it's not working the same. So you're going to have to get used to whatever equipment you're on. So, and also because I'm on a laptop, various other screens are popping up that normally don't. So I guess we're going to run this one. And here is now your main board, main menu. And all of these options you will see, and you may not be able to click on them because of your limited capacity in your data entry. Many of you may be familiar with PA, and there may be similarities, but this is a totally unique system designed for our program. So hopefully you'll get it routinely after you're familiar with it. But for now, I'm just going through the motions so you can see what the screens look like and how you navigate. It's barely perceptible, but the very top line here that says PMS mainboard, PMS again is Permit Managing System, and these dots that are around this one, that's your default, that's where the cursor is, and you can either hit enter because it's there or click on it with your mouse to go to it. So I'm hitting enter because it's defaulted to it, and this is where the actual data entry is done. There's a series of fields. It defaults to this right here. I'm highlighting. It's the file screen, and you will be going from one of those to the others as needed. Not all of these screens will be used by you. This is just everything available, no matter what data entry is needed. And
Larry?
Yeah.
Could you maximize that screen?
I don't think so. I'm going to hit the maximize and hope not much happens.
All right, thank you.
Did that work for you?
A little bit, thanks.
Okay. That's one of the options we don't always have, is making it larger. I don't have a mouse to use and to roll it bigger. So what we're going to do is navigate from one screen to the next. These bottom rows here, owner, agent, description, you can click on them and you can see what's on there, but you won't be able to data enter anything without a permit number, and that's what's up here. And for random, we've chosen PB1000, meaning Palm Beach, and every permit number starts with the county. However, you guys, in dealing with the field permits, there's a code that designates field permits, and it starts with -8. Are we just starting right off with field permits?
Well, yeah, why don't you go ahead and let's focus on field permits, Larry,
So,
and try to keep it as basic as possible.
So -8 is a visual clue that we're entering a field permit, and there'll be 6 numbers total. So 0, 5. This is the one we've used as a sample, and it's a bogus one I made up yesterday. So once you enter a number, you can either go over to this Go button and click it, or you can hit enter, and that puts you in the Go button, and then enter again. So this field permit exists because I created it yesterday. I'm going to go through with you how to create one next. But just to show you data that's already been entered, now that this one exists, you see fields that are populated. And it starts with, it identifies who we are, what type of permit it is, the date it was created, the county it's in, who the field inspector is, who's responsible for, who is authorized to issue that permit, and my initials, Larry Tice, is who did the data entry. So you'll be following that kind of format. The owner, a lot of this stuff will be populated for you when you go to the Create button. This is the owner, the agent, what a basic description of it is. There may be multiples. I've only done one here. Okay, these bottom screens, when you click on them, it'll show them to you, and you can at will click on a different screen. But this top row, if you click on any of these, once you're in them, you then have to exit to move on to some other screen. So the project name, if it's a condominium, often will have a name. Sometimes it just isn't one if it's a single-family dwelling. Then there's the address, where it's located. Then the bottom part is your GIS information so that someone can look at it in the GIS realm. You may not ever go to that, but it's still part of what you enter. So I'm going to exit out of here, show you the next screen is status. There are no fees involved with field permits. The status here is, these are various authorization levels, who signed it, and since we already have field in here, it shows that it's a field permit. The status of it is always going to be complete, and then you move on to the final order screen. This is where it shows the data of when it was issued and when it expires and which type of permit it was. So that's basically just what these screens look like when they're filled. And at various times when you're entering this data, if you see a save button, like right here I'm circling it, you have to save it before exiting just to make sure that all that data you type stays there. Okay, we're going to now go to the Create button. That's this one down here. It says if you leave your cursor on each one of these, it'll tell you what it is. And so we're calling it a Create screen, but it says New Permit. And this is what that screen looks like. Hopefully you can see this, even though it's pretty small. But what you're going to do is, if you can see these colored portions, those are the required fields. And purple means you have to have something there. Blue means you can have something there or somewhere else, but at least one of those has to have been filled in. So what I'm going to do is create one while you watch. And the -8 is always there, and then 0 because we're not up into 6 digits yet for the total number of field permits. So I'm going to just do 66666 and say enter, and it moves on for you. The navigation is hopefully one by one. The section is always coastal engineering, so what my shortcut is just to hit C, but what you might have to do is hit the pull down menu. And these are all your options. If there was a violation or something involved, then you would have these other ones, or if it was a joint coastal permit. But for now, we're just doing the coastal engineering. And then you move on to the next screen by hitting enter or mousing it over. And then P is for permit, and just to show you, your other options are these. These are various other types of files that get created, but you won't deal with them. So if you then move on to the next one, you can see that field permit is your obvious choice. And so the shortcut for me is just to type C, enter, P, enter, F, enter. But in the future, you can always email me and check out any of this stuff, because this is a lot to remember at one session. Then you move on to the receive date. I'll just put today. And I'm hitting enter so that you go one at a time. The county we'll say is Bay. If you don't know the shortcuts, BA is Bay, B is Brevard. We should provide you with a list at some point if you don't already know those. and you have your pull down if you want to scroll through alphabetically to find the county you're in. Okay, the assigned to here is always going to be the same as the inspector unless someone else is writing this field permit, which happens sometimes. So I'm clicking in here, and anytime you type a letter, it'll go to it. It approximates in alphabetical order. So if you type K for Keith, it moves on there. But of course, there's multiple people with the same letter, so I'm going to highlight Keith, since he's the one that did this one. He's assigned to Bay County. Every county has an assigned field inspector because they're designated authority in those counties. So here I'm just going to make up some bogus address. Now, it's maybe hard to see, but there's 3 blocks on this create screen. You have to now use your mouse to move down, or your cursor to move down to the second block. And the key information here is the owner, and it could be a person, it could be a company. And if you use these owner and company lists, this is a list of every owner and company in our database. And it's sort of a shortcut if you know that the name of this is Baycrest. It'll approximate it by showing you anything that starts with BACO or so we can just use this one. If it's not on this list, you're then going to have to type it in manually. So I'm using this one here. It populates it for you. At this point, if you knew that the information on this, because this list may have old listings, you may have to update it with a new phone number or whatever is different at the time you're doing the data entry. So then we're going to move on to the agent. You may not be an agent, but every property has an owner. So let's look for some owner. You may notice that when you click on a field like agent, it may not go there and you have to do it again. We're still working out some kinks on this. So if you find it on the list, you can choose it, say OK, and it populates it for you. So if you feel that at this point all the information is correct, you then move on to this Create button, and you click on it and nothing will happen because you have to do it again. Another glitch. And this pops up. It's sort of a confirmation, and no matter what it says, it's going to move on anyway. So now this is created. And we go through all these fields again to populate ones that have not been automatically. A lot of this has automatically been done for you for field permits. So here I'm going to put my initials. So now we'll know who to blame or praise when we see how corrected it's been created. But at least we know who did the data entry. Then this field here is for links. And every site usually has a history of permitting throughout the last 25 years. And this is where we find those. This is where we create a link. And if you are doing data entry and you don't know some of the information, if you find a link to previous permits at that address, some of that information. Otherwise, you're going to have to ask the field inspector what some of the missing information is. So we're not doing links today. That's more advanced. We're moving on to the owner to show you that what I created in that new permit screen is now been populated. So the owner and the agent are there, but the description is not. So we're going to have to make that up. So this is your pull-down list. You may not be able to see everything on the permit list. You're going to have to scroll up and down to see the complete list. Most of the time, you're going to pick something new unless it's a repair or a modification or a change of design. But I'm just going to use new since that's where most of the time. This pull-down list is all the different activities that can be permitted. If it's a dune walkover, which is very common for a field inspector, we'll pick that. Okay. This is the old type of, well, we'll just use this. This is a walkway or a boardwalk or stairs or something that people walk on that's not across the stream. So we'll just use it for now. And then at this point, your options are what status this activity. And in all cases, except an exemption, we're going to say approved. So now if you want another one, you go down to the plus sign. That then opens up this field and we'll say new. You can either pick it from the pull down or just type N and hit enter and you move across. Let's say dune construction. I'm going to look for the other type of walkover because there's two. One that goes across the dune and one that doesn't. Here's dune walkover. Again, go over here and type A or pick it out of the pull-down list. So there's your description screen and how you've entered it. There's nothing else on this row that deals with entering a new field permit. The location screen has populated what we entered, but it doesn't give you the R monument. On every field permit, there's going to be a reference or a range monument, hopefully. And for Bay County, if you type BA in this screen here, it'll show you every R monument from 1 to whatever the highest number is. And you can either scroll down to find it or read it from the field permit itself. So I'm going to cancel that one. If you can read it, and hopefully all your field inspectors have written legibly enough for you to be able to read it. Let's say it's at BA10, so BA010 is BA10. If it's 3 digits, you just type that in, hit enter, and then for every R monument you have a direction and a distance. And this, every time the laptop mouse hovers over something, it goes to it. Okay, this format is how direction and distance is entered. If you don't do it right, it'll tell you can't accept it. So it shows you the example of north. So it's a direction and how many feet in that direction from the R monument that you've entered. So I'm going to put north 10 / north 50. Well, if I was in there, I would. Okay, north 10 / north 50. So now it's in the correct format, and I usually hit enter at this point. If your activity or where it was permitted stretches from more than one R monument, if it goes from R10 to say R15, you would then enter the next one here. So this is just in case there's more than one R monument that is a segment or a line. And then again you put where it is from that R monument. And then you have to save what you do at this point be, what I'm going to do is erase this because it's not your usual. Most of the time you're going to have only one arm on in the direction from that. So here's where your save button comes in. I should hover over there. That tells you when you hover over there that that's the save button or a commit button if you're familiar with PA. Then you come down here to the P, which stands for populate, and what it's going to do is highlight below this box or fill in all the direction information for your GIS system. Once you've done that,
Larry?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, could I ask a question?
go ahead.
This is Jenny, before you move on. For Monroe County, they don't have our monuments. They use mile markers. So how would those be entered?
You won't.
Okay.
You just ignore that for Monroe County only.
Okay, thank you.
There are virtual monuments that they've established, but someone else takes care of that for us. We don't do data entry on that. As far as I know, we don't even have a place for a mile marker. It would have to be in the notes on some other screen. So we're done with this location with the description page and the location page, and we move on to status. There are no fees. So on the status page, you'll see that this complete status has been checked already. And because on field permits, the designers of this system decided that since they're all the same, it takes some of the data entry off of the data entry operator, operates it automatically. But what we do change here is, instead of staff, we're going to put field inspector, because that's an authority level. Who signed this permit? So you can either pick it out of the pull-down list, or you could have just typed F. And then I said OK, and then I have to save it in order to exit the screen. And the last one here is final order screen. You've got this populated with this action date is when the permit was issued. What you have to now put in is the expiration date. Most of the time, well, depending on when turtle season is, a lot of times these are 90 days, so I'm just 9, 26, 13. But you'll get that from the field permit itself. And then that's all you need to do on that. Well, we'll cover it again. We won't need any of this other stuff because that's all you do on the final order screen. So you exit out and see I forgot to say save it, and it asks you if you want to or not. That's a yes. There's a lot of built-in reminders of what you have to do. Okay, you're now done with all the data entry, one field permit. So at some point, this Acrobat Adobe symbol tells you, it says preview, but what we call it is a summary report. So once you're done with all your data entry, you go to this summary report and you either email it to someone, your supervisor, or I don't know how we're going to keep track of what data entry has been done in quality control. But this is where the summary report is, and you would either print it for someone or email it to someone. I don't know how that's going to be worked out yet. But what this shows is a summary of all the data entry done for each permit number. And so there may be blanks. And you scroll down to page 2. This is what it looks like. And so I'm Xing out of there. No, I don't follow the current tab. And this close my PowerPoint connection, I guess, because it's covered over the phone. So that's the entering of a new fuel permit. And are there any questions before we move on to a pre-construction conference? Okay, if you're going to receive a pre-construction conference, you're then going to have to do that entry. So it's back here, back to the main board, and it lives under this field, CPCL monitor. And you pull down this. I don't have a permit here yet, but
What we could do is use PB 1000.
okay, we're using a random number. These are not fuel permits anymore. You're dealing now with administrative permits, but they still inspect them. So each county has a letter code, and let's say Palm Beach, and that's PB. And then again, its numbers have to be entered, and we're not at that million mark yet. So I'm using a random number of 1,000. 00 1,000, and then you can either hit enter, or move over here to go. And so this is all the data entry done for PB 1000, and the particular case we're using right now is the pre-construction conference. CCCL monitor screen is where you'll go for that data entry, and you can see that we've already done both the pre-construction meeting and the progress reports, which is, you won't be dealing with progress reports yet. So the pull-down menu is either type P, because that's where you're going in the alphabetical list, or find it on your list. And pre-construction meeting is what we call the pre-construction conference record form you're going to be pulling here. So that one has already been highlighted. You don't see a date. The wording here is pretty obsolete. We've changed a lot of this in reality, but it still exists on the database. So in this case, the due date is going to be when the inspector was actually there. It's not populated here because this is an old permit number, but when you do it, you'll have to put the date here of when the inspector was there. You'll see that at the bottom behind it. And then you put the date you actually received. And we have date stamps. I don't know if you're going to see that or how you're going to handle them if it's coming in electronic. But even though there's only one date here, you're going to be entering two for a pre-construction conference, because there are reports that show these dates later. And you can keep track of the time periods of when they were there and when they were. Here. This was entered on 5/11/11. I'll see that they were there on 5/10/11. So this is what it'll look like when you're done. Then I'm going to save it. And I know I exited without saving it, so I'll have to say yes to it. Now we're going back to PB 1000. So actually I exited, and where you would have, let's go back to this screen. You're on this screen. Over here is the save button for this bottom row. Go back. Sorry, I went to the wrong screen. This has been saved. And that's all there are. That's all your duties are for a pre-construction conference. It's very simple. The next item is under the final order screen. Okay, this is your final order screen where we had when the permit was issued and when it expires, and various other things happen on this. The tracking for you is the bottom row here. This is where we keep track of both the final site inspection and the final certification. And what is put in here is the date they were there and what they saw when they were there, what the report shows. When you look at your final inspection report, which we call an FSIR for final site inspection, or final inspection record, there's going to be two places to enter it. This date here, final inspection received, and then the status, meaning what they saw when they were there. The pull-down list for that is these options. Completed in compliance, if there's a violation. If it's only partially completed, it'll say, scroll down to see the rest of this list. It'll say work in progress. And it'll say not started. These are the common, what you see commonly is. So when you go to this list, you'll either choose one of your, or type C and it'll populate for you, or type N for not started. Those are your options.